Next up is the movie Roman J. Israel, Esquire. This movie was not on my radar to see. I think I had seen a preview for it, but it, didn't really do much for me. My best friend had a hard-on to go check it out, so we actually went and watched it last weekend. And it was a really good movie. I liked it. Spoiler alert like a motherfucker. If you have not seen the movie Roman J. Israel, Esquire, please fast forward a couple minutes because I will spoil the shit out of it for you. So Roman J. Israel is a movie about an attorney played by Denzel Washington. He's a character that's very smart, very intelligent, very, very knows the ins and outs of the law better than anyone. He's kind of like an idiot savant when it comes to the law. But he's like super socially awkward. He was the partner of a law firm where his partner made all the court appearances and pretty much did everything except for all like the paperwork and strategy and all the legal shit that Roman J. Israel was doing behind the scenes for his partner and essentially for himself, since he was a partner in the law firm. And long story short, his partner has a heart attack or a stroke and can no longer practice law. He was like in a vegetative state. Roman J. Israel is forced to come out of his shell and start, practicing law, basically. And then the guy passes away, and Roman J. Israel winds up getting like an offer to like a big shot law firm, which is run by Colin Farrell, who happened to be like a law student of the partner of Roman Israel. And it was like his mentor, and he really looked up to him and stuff. And then he realized that Roman J. Israel was like the brains behind everything, and pretty much like offered him a gig. Anyway, he also had this, Roman J. Israel had this activist side to him, where he wanted to create positive change in the world and progressive reform. He established the first like student government or legal club or whatever at his university, and something he realized with the legal, through the lens of his career, is that the legal system, at least the criminal justice rung of it, is broken. It's set up in a way where the incentives are aligned with results that are ultimately biased towards incarcerating blacks and Latinos disproportionately, which are like driven by by for-profit prisons, which are literally incentivized and paid more to incarcerate more, to hold more criminals. And since money is driving that, it drives you can logically derive that it promotes the building of more prisons. And as that industry has grown, its lobby has grown. And since its lobby has grown in strength, that means more money in the pockets of politicians, which are responsible for legislation that allows for 3-strike rules and for exorbitant amount of bail to be necessary to be out on parole, and for, you know, poor families that can afford it, and et cetera, et cetera. So he realizes this issue. He knows of this issue, and pretty much his life's work, which he carried around with him every single day in a those really large, like, accordion style briefcases, was some sort of a class action lawsuit against the justice system to, and I might be getting some of the details wrong, but pretty much to, like, revamp and set a precedent to fix all those cracks in the system, to realign the incentives toward justice. And he had the autistic-like focused brain in law, as well as the drive of activism to be able to pull it off, to want to pull it off, to be able to even put it together as a proposal. And he was not able to do this himself because it required, like, tons of money, which the character Colin Farrell had, because he was running this huge law firm. And Denzel, or Roman J. Israel, was pretty much, you know, working this 2-man shop where he was getting paid like $500 a week, literally, as an attorney. And that kind of showed how he was, and also kind of like what his partner was like, because his partner just either really wasn't making money, according to his family at the end, or not at the end, like in the middle of it, it was running a deficit, that firm, for the previous 2 years, and they weren't making any money. So either he was, like, squandering it, or I don't know, but Denzel was only making, or being paid $500 a week, which shows you what type of, like, minimalist, meager life he had. He had, like, peanut butter sandwiches every day for, like, lunch and dinner, and had a cozy little apartment. So when he had to pretty much accept this like handout type job that Colin Farrell offered in this corporate environment, it, like, really wasn't him. It was a big juxtaposition from what he was used to. And he was absolutely, like, a fish out of water. He didn't know how to act, didn't know how to, like, maneuver in the world outside of the bubble that he had created for himself, which was interesting to see, and how he changed with, like, new amounts of money coming in, and dealing with colleagues, dealing with a potential love interest as well. And he wound up going so far, I think it got to a point where he realized how uncomfortable he was. Like, he wasn't just going through the motions and, like, oblivious. He wanted to have he wanted to be back in his bubble, in a way, so much so that he was willing to, and did, break the law in the way that he did, which I'm not going to spoil that part for you guys, to get enough money to be able to say fuck you to the Colin Farrell job, and kind of isolate himself again, but this time with enough money necessary for him to live his meager existence, but, you know, without having to work for somebody else again. And then that decision ultimately is the one that was his downfall and fucked him in the end. Now, I am going to spoil the end for you, because there was this big smile on my face when the end happened, because I told you guys I listen to, like, a lot of, like, writing podcasts and stuff like that, and one of them that's like one of the better ones is the Story Grid the Story Grid podcast, and it's like a dense, not dense. Like, I think it's entertaining, but I might not be completely objective on that because I'm into writing and I like it. So it might come off as like really dense for anybody that's not into writing or storytelling. But Sean Coyne is an editor that has over 25 years experience, and he edits all of Stephen Pressfield's books, which is like the man as far as writing. And he does the podcast with a writer that's literally writing his book and sending Sean, chapters and scenes of his book, so that Sean can give his feedback and teach him how to, and pretty much edit it for him and tell him like what to fix, what not to fix. And me as a wannabe writer, like I obviously pick up like all the tips and tricks and like help that Sean provides, since I can't afford a real editor. And it's been like an invaluable podcast to me in terms of learning like structure of stories and like just the science behind writing a story. And what I meant by like there was a smile on my face at the end was that I learned through the Story Grid, and then like as he points out like different stories from like books or movies like The Silence of the Lambs or Charlotte's Web or The Hobbit or whatever, different stories that he speaks about to show the commonality of structure wise. He pointed out that, and now that I know like those things, like I pick up on them in movies, like the inciting incident and the hero at the mercy of the villain scene, which is in every story and stuff like that. I picked up on this in the Roman J. Israel movie, which was that there's an external story and an internal story, and the external story and the internal story must end on opposite charges, and the charges plus and minus, positive and negative. So the external story in this movie was Roman Israel's like bigger vision, which was to create or be the spark that creates this reform through the legal system, through the judicial system that he wanted to enact. The internal story was Roman Israel, the person, being able to live a happy, fulfilling life and live happily ever after. You can't end the story both on a positive note or both on a negative note, like the external and internal story. Most stories, I mean, you could do whatever the fuck you want, right? But as a viewer, as a reader, you tend to have trouble digesting stories that do that. And if you like think about like your favorite movies or stories or like books or short stories or whatever, or shows, and with that in mind, and you'll notice how there's a positive and negative in like a macro and micro story within the full like movie or whatever it is. And in this case, the macro was that at the end, Colin Farrell follows through with Roman's like wishes and enacts that reform, like sets everything in motion to put it in. And from watching the movie, you're or at least me as a viewer was under the impression that of course it's going to work and it's going to be the best thing since sliced bread, because he was like that smart of a legal mind. And then his love interest, she continues the work on the community and working with the college kids that are interested in activism and community service and protesting causes, et cetera, et cetera. She's continuing that work. So those like macro wants that external genre story ends like on a positive note. So then the internal story has to end on a negative to be on opposite charges. Or it could be the other way around, but in this case, it was positive external, negative internal. And the negative internal is that Roman gets his head blown off at the end and dies. So, yeah, that sucked for Roman, but it did put a smile on my face because I recognized this storytelling tool within the story, and made me feel like I was learning something. And that's pretty much it, man. It was definitely a dope movie. You guys should check it out. It's called Roman J. Israel Esquire.